everyone. Good morning, good morning. I'm going to do an audio check in just a moment because I don't know if I forgot. I don't know if I forgot. I'm going to make sure that that is on live. Okay, I'm going to listen now. Good morning, good morning. All right, that sounded pretty good. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. Today we're going to dye some yarn, and I didn't bother setting up a face cam today because I want to focus on the yarn dyeing. Now, I don't know how long we'll go, but we're going to have some fun. I have some very warm toned colors here. During some of the video, I'll be doing some projects that will only be on stream, or maybe I'll film to use for like shorts or reels and stuff like that. Some of the content may become an episode of Dyepot Weekly that'll come out in the next year or so. Some of those videos could end up eventually. I haven't updated the listing yet, being last minute lab partner listings. But the goal is really to have fun and let you hang out with me while I am working. And so I am very, very excited to be here. And yeah, we're gonna have some fun. So I do need to, before I bring over my pan and the yarn, I'll tell you more about the project in a moment, but I have this very messy setup of these warm colors. Let's see. The yarn we're going to overdye is a blue, so I figured let's go full warm tone, see how green things may or may not feel. I don't know. We're going to just have fun with it. But I've brought over 5 different colors of Dharma acid dyes: Brilliant Yellow, Oxblood Red, Golden Poppy, Valentine Blush, and Saffron Spice. I also am pre-soaking a skein. Oh, there it is. Another skein of the Bare Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn to use as a yarn mop as needed, but I think that will create something really warm, summery, and fun. Okay, well, filming that clip, in case you did not gather, what I'm working on today is over-dyeing some yarn. In particular, we're over-dyeing a pastel blue. And this is Wool of the Andes bulky. So it's 100% Peruvian Highland wool, bulky weight. The color, I believe, is Clarity, which is a very nice sort of pastel blue. And then I have here a skein of Bare Wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn to kind of have as a comparison. I realized it would be fun to see how the colors may or may not feel different based on like starting with this blue color. And whether or not some of this blue will peek through the yarn in the end, that I don't know either. But I am excited. But hi, Tara. Hi, Nox Hydra. Welcome. Oh, hi, Sandry. Nice. Okay. Always fun to get some dirt when I bring things over. Okay. I will shift this in a moment. Okay, I'm going to bring over 300 grams of yarn into my 4-inch deep, full-size catering steam pan. And I'm squeezing out most of the pre-soak, even though I don't think it matters that much. And in my debate about how to arrange things, whenever I do 2 skeins of one type and one of another, I'm always on the fence of how I should arrange it in the pan. But I think maybe we'll do something like this, where we'll have our blue yarns together and then the off-white on its own. I think that makes some sense. Okay, how much acid do I want? Okay, and I should add for the stream, everything I'm using today is dedicated for dyeing yarn, and none of it is ever used for the preparation of food. Okay, I want to do 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'm gonna grab some water. Sometimes the amount of acid that I add is really, really arbitrary. Other times I have a little bit of an idea of why I want to do it, but yeah. All right, I have right here 8 cups of water and 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. This is a little bit more acid than what I frequently start with, but we have non-superwash yarn, and I do want things to move, but I also want them to kind of stick where I've put it. Okay, and right now we have enough water that a lot of the yarn is at the surface. I'm gonna want the colors to spread a little bit more, so I'm gonna go measure out more water and acid at those same ratios. You'll see me add 4 tablespoons of white vinegar in here. And I don't think I'll add all of it, but I'll add however much until the yarn has a coverage that I like. And I should say this on camera as well, but ultimately, a lot of times I tell you exactly how much water I use. It doesn't necessarily matter. There are times when it does, but it doesn't always matter. The important thing is to have an amount of water that feels right to you. And so, yeah, here, when I add dye powders in, not only will it mostly stay at the surface, but it'll be really easy to work it through. The more compressed the yarn is, because there's not that much liquid in there yet, you can see if I press down, I can cover my fingers with water. But the more compressed things are, the more your dyes will sort of stay where you've put them. But I do want things to stay, but I also want them to spread. So I hope that that makes sense. Oh, I need to, this is going to be a little awkward. I do need to film a little talking head here for later. Let's see how this will work. And for you guys, I'll just be, oh, I am like way off camera. I have to stand on my tiptoes this time. Nope, let's lower the camera a little bit. That was too hard. A lot of times I have to squat because I have the camera too low, but usually not tiptoes. Okay. This will go later on, maybe when it's heating. When we're over dyeing yarn, there are a couple things we need to consider. This yarn may have been bleached at one point before it was dyed the blue, and also it does have dye on it. And so those two things can shift the way that yarn picks up color. Like a pure white yarn may absorb color differently than a bare yarn. But there might be times when you want part of the yarn to be pure white. And so in that case, starting with a commercial pure white yarn makes sense. Ultimately, this yarn is pastel enough. I don't think it's going to make a huge impact on how much dye the yarn can absorb, but it's always worth keeping some of these variables in mind as you're planning out your project. Normally when I film talking heads, I move the camera, but today things are cramped enough that I don't want to, and I remembered that I wanted to have that filmed. Okay, now let me think. I am going to want to add some acid, I think. I'm only debating because sometimes with the non-superwash yarn, there's stuff that comes out of it. All right, I am going to refresh this water. I don't think there's anything in it. But there are times when like you pre-soak yarn and then the water feels cloudy or whatever after. And I don't know how much of an impact that makes in the end, you know? Okay, what do I need? I want to add some acid in here. 1, 2. I normally don't measure when it comes to this, but I want to just have this bath of water with vinegar that I'll use for yarn mops throughout the process. Now, a yarn mop, if you're new to watching, is a bonus skein of yarn that I use to soak up dye in some capacity. It could be wiping dye up off of my counter. It could be, and this is the same yarn base as that one right here there. It could be wiping the dye off the counter. It could be, if I have dye powder on my gloves, which we will when we're setting this up, wiping that on here. Sometimes if I'm doing a tonal, it could be soaking up the leftover pigment from the dye bath so I can reuse the dye bath for another color. And so there are many ways that I play with this. Now I use these aluminum pans to hold hot yarn mainly. I also use them to like hold on to yarn mops. Now, this one does have a couple of holes in the bottom. They do react with acid over time, and so I do have to replace them because also they get holes because, you know, I'll be moving them around and they'll get little creases and things. But the acid definitely does not help those. But as I'm gearing up to do this, let's think about what else I have prepped for today. I think I might do some countertop speckles at some point. I have a really thick, bulky 2-ply yarn and a thin fingering weight 2-ply yarn, and I thought it could be fun to speckle on both. I have some roving ready to go. This is 200 grams of roving. There's no acid in here yet, and I have not yet decided what we're going to do. The two options for this are to take, I can set up a pole, I think. And I can always like pivot with colors and all kinds of things too. Okay. Gauge with my audience. Let's start a poll. What should I eventually do? Liquid neon dyes. Okay. I have a poll for what we'll do with this roving. And and so I am so like amused by this, but the basically I have some neon dyes left over that we may use up at some point today. I could take those liquid dyes and pour it on here. That's one option. Another idea I considered was taking neon rainbow dyes in powder form and just sort of speckling them on, letting it spread through to make some neon roving. Those were the two things I was kind of mulling in my head. I guess another idea for powders is I could use something that isn't neon, but then do like when I speckle on roving, but really it's applying the powders and letting it spread through, creating the type of colorway that I really like creating. And so those are basically the ideas, but the 4 options in the poll, which it's kind of funny because it's really 4 options, but it's kind of 2 polls at the same time. Because either we're going to do something with the liquid dyes or something with dry dye powders. And then the other question is, you know, do I do something neon rainbow or not neon rainbow? And this brings me to another concern I have a lot. And that's, I don't want people to get sick of what I am doing. Now, when I'm talking about that, I mean, like, in a lot of streams, I've been doing neon rainbow stuff. But when I dye neon rainbow stuff, that sells pretty quickly. So I don't know, like, I don't necessarily want to do all rainbows all the time, even though I love rainbows and they sell well, because I try to vary the colors and everything that I do. So that's one of the dilemmas that I have. But you can feel free to leave suggestions for the roving in the chat. Hopefully I'll actually get to the roving. But for now, we're going to work on this guy. And so now I'm going to mask up. I'm wearing my Deluxe Rubber Respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves because I'll be dealing with dry dye powder. Which I'll say again for the other camera. Okay. But feel free, even though like I'm working on a video, feel free to ask me anything. I love answering questions. Why this mask already feels so sweaty, I don't know. That's not a good sign for dealing with a lot of powders. I may sound more muffled now because I'm wearing my Deluxe Rubber Respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves. The gloves don't muffle the sound, but the mask does. Okay. I want to make sure I can see what I'm doing. Okay, but let's lean in a little bit. I'm going to start with this Oxblood Red. I think I want this to be the main color. And I'm really kind of heavily, but also somewhat randomly, sprinkling it on around the yarn. And I am a little bit torn. I mean, just a little bit between, everything is cold still around the countertop. And I think I'm going to just go for it. I was debating just sort of letting the dye sit in place and not working it through with my hands. Kind of like I might for roving, where there I know it will kind of shift all the way through. But I'm deciding to work it through a little bit more. Now, you can see already that the tone of the red feels very different on the blue than it does on the bare yarn. It feels cooler toned there and warmer toned here. So that base color is making a difference. Let's go into some yellow, which I don't necessarily have to use all over, but maybe we'll add a little bit up here, just a bit, a little bit down here. It doesn't have to be across the entire skein, but just this is another color where I feel like the difference will be the most dramatic. And so it definitely is feeling yellowish, you know, but the color definitely feels different. It's a little bit more like a yellow on a gray versus feeling like, ooh, this is like a green. But as we add more colors, you know, it may make more of a difference on some colors than others. But I think I'm going to carry on with the other three colors maybe bringing some of these other ones back until I'm happy with the coverage of this first layer that we have here. Time-lapse voiceover will come after, Rebecca. All right, let's go into the saffron spice. Because this way I can talk about anything random. But when I was doing this, because I feel like this week I've dyed a bunch of roving. But when playing, oh, I forgot that this color kind of disappears a little bit at first. It'll rebloom. But yeah, I was debating like doing chunky speckles and letting them spread. But the thing with having like yarn versus roving is that since roving has no twist to it, when you apply the dyes on, they really, really spread. Like by the time I'm on one edge of the pan and I get all the way to the other, you'll notice a difference in there. Now, at this point, I'm still mostly focusing on areas that don't have color. And the goal is to be a bit random about it. But eventually, we will flip the yarn and add color to the other side. The question is going to remain, though, are we going to have like some of the blues peeking through, or what kind of coverage are we going to end up with overall? Not only yarn is ending up on this yarn mop. Whatever is the most fun. Oh man, rainbows are like my heart and soul, but occasionally from lab partners, and this is no shade at all, I get requests for not rainbow, which is a legitimate request. Let's see. This is the golden poppy. Can I add it anywhere else? I don't think so. Now, I do want to come in, I think, with more of the red. It's funny, if I was buying a yarn to overdye and I wanted to overdye in this type of colorway, I would not have picked, and I'm going sort of in the same spots where I went with the red before, but if I was doing this, I would not have picked a blue yarn for this. Maybe I would have picked a yellow yarn or something, but I really enjoy sort of intentionally, what's the word? I really enjoy intentionally picking an unexpected color for something like this, because I think that that brings in, I think it brings an interest for the video that I'm working on, you know, to go that less expected route. Okay. I'll do a voiceover in a moment. A voiceover is coming in a moment. But what I want to do now is, and I probably should have started with the yellows, but I'm kind of trying to work things through that I've added a little bit more, just to work it through multiple layers, because once it's warm, I can still manipulate the colors, but I'm not going to be doing it with my fingertips anymore. Once things are warm, I will be going in, and you'll see that we're probably going to use some of those pure yellows. But once things are warm, then I will be going in more with a spoon or something. And so, yeah. But I kind of like where things are right now. So I think what I'm going to do at this stage is let everything sit for 5 minutes, and then I'll take it to go heat it. Okay, there is that. Whew. Okay. Woo-wee. I got sweaty really fast. Normally, I have a little bit of time before I feel like I can't breathe. Just because there's moisture. Let's see. Love the deep blood red color. The calm background, the intense red and yellow on top. Ooh, I feel like I can make it. I feel like it's looking a little over or underexposed. Let's see. The problem with when, come on. There we go. I feel like that's a little more true. It's the problem with when the light shifts as I work. Happy birthday, Erin! Happy birthday! It is funny how very, very different the yarns feel. I'm like, oh, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But even on the red, because I don't think I added that much more, it really makes it feel more cherry bomb in a very cool way. They just feel so different from one another. The yarn mop, which actually the yarn mop now looks overexposed, but the yarn mop has very little color. Let's see if it, actually it's pretty true. It's just hard for me to see on the, excuse me, the tiny thumbnail. Okay, so as we're waiting, the other annoying thing is I'm going to go through so many gloves today. I like to wash and dry my gloves and reuse them over and over. And normally I could take off these gloves and then come back and put these exact ones right on. But there's so much moisture in the air that the inside of the gloves is a little bit wet. And so therefore, I'm not going to be able to do that. You can see how much, maybe, I don't know if I'm on camera, I'm struggling to take it off. And so I'll be able to reuse these a different day, but not today. Now, if I was actually in a lab environment of any kind, I would never reuse gloves. Never, never, right? Because, like, you don't do that. But when I'm paying for them, and that's sort of part of the cost of everything, they can add up. And so this is some advice that I try to give, like, when people want to sell their yarn. Because the costs of the yarn you dye is not just the yarn and the dye itself. Like, each glove, and it's possible things have become cheaper, but at one point, like, they became like $30 a box. I'm curious now how much the gloves that I buy are. So I'm gonna, like, actually go look. I haven't bought gloves in a while because it's like in 2020, gloves became really hard to get. When was the last time I reordered gloves? 2 years ago. And okay, fine. It's $14 for 100 gloves before tax. So that's not as bad. Yeah, it's like reusing gloves is a no-no in a lab, but when it's not going to affect an experiment and I'm not trying to have a sterile procedure, I can reuse them. So if a box of 100 gloves is $14 a box, then each pair of gloves is 28 cents, which ultimately, okay, that's not that big a deal. But what if I go through like 4 pairs of gloves when I'm only working on 300 grams of yarn? That can start to add up. And so those are things, and like during the height of like the pandemic, I was paying $30 for 100 gloves. So then each glove was 30 cents. And so each set was 60 cents. And so then that's when I was like, oh man, This isn't like that negligible anymore, right? I love that with the happy birthday, you have the Indy barking emoji. That makes me very, very happy. Okay, that's my 5 minutes. Oh, I still need to film that voiceover. It's gonna be okay. Like this 5 minutes that I'm letting it sit is not like that important. It's okay for me to wait and do the voiceover. When I film voiceovers, I like to change the resolution of the camera because then the file is like 4 times as small because it's just the audio. Okay, voiceover. Our blue yarn was making more of an impact than I really thought. I feel like the reds feel so much more intense on the blue than they do on the white bear yarn, which is interesting to me. I don't think I'm adding that much more dye there, but I also could be doing that subconsciously. I feel like the colorways are both really beautiful, but there are definitely differences there. Now, I could pick a different technique where absolutely we will get more coverage and cover up more of the blue and have none of it peeking through, but I wanted to do something that was a little bit more random, like I might just do on a white bear yarn. Got to go back to 4K. All right. It's been 5 minutes, so I'm going to go take it over to the stove very carefully. And the reason why I want to be careful is that I'm anticipating, yes, that we still have a lot of color in all of our yarn, even on the more yellow sections. And so what I don't want to do is rotate this very much. I want to keep it as level as possible and go start heating things up. And so I'll check in on it after it's been heating for 10 or 15 minutes. I am happy to add, because I was mentioning the Indy barking, Indy is still very much with us, which is fantastic. He is old, a nice little curmudgeon, but he's still happy. Okay, level, level, level. Let's turn on the stove. And the other thing with a gas stove is always double check that the burners are actually on. That is something that is pretty important. Let's see. Yeah, Indy is doing so good. Oh, I should reduce the exposure again. Configure video. Come on. Let's do back to -6. Yeah. Oh man. He like sleeps almost all of the day. He still is very food motivated, but he's definitely becoming a little bit feral in that he doesn't really remember how to wait for treats. And yeah, his behavior is declining a bit, but I think that part of it also is he can't hear or see as well. And so, yeah, he struggles. Like if a treat is on the floor, sometimes he can't find it easily. And like he'll ask to go outside and then he'll forget to pee. And so then he'll have to go out again. Am I using RIT dyes? No, I am using acid dyes. So these are Dharma acid dyes from Dharma Trading Company. And on wool yarns, you only need to use acid, either citric acid or vinegar with them. RIT dyes have a combination of a few different dye types in them. I think that they might be direct dyes, which I don't know as much about. I think that they tend to be larger, but they can work on cottons and on wool. But I think they're not as wash fast as using either like acid dyes on wool or fiber reactive dyes on either wool or cotton. I don't know what that noise was that my phone made. Okay, let's see. Ooh, avoid neons. No, I don't want to avoid neons. I want to see. No! Fine, fine. I'll avoid neons on the roving. Okay, when we get to that. But I have to think. I'm debating. Because part of me wanted to do the roving next, but then the stove is going to be used up. So that's the thing I have to think about. Because I was like, oh, I have this yarn I'm going to speckle. But it's also possible that I could do the roving and then just not have access to the stove for a bit. The endless debates, you guys. Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes on the yarn that we have on the stove. Part of the concern is that the yarn that we have on the stove is also non-superwash, so it's just going to need like a little bit more time and love. Oh, I love answering questions, and I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, while we wait, we don't have to do the roving yet, but oh, you know what we can do? Let's use up these neon dyes. In a shoebox. And so we won't do it on the roving, but I have these dies here, and then we'll see what we still have left. So what am I going to use? We're going to use some Swish DK. Oh yeah, the pre-orders of, actually I'm going to use some of this water. This was the 8 cups of water with 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. What was I going to say? Oh, if you pre-ordered a rainbow sock blank from me, those have been dyed. I have to unravel this next batch. I'm going to increase the water. I have to unravel in the next batch and label and stuff, but I should be shipping that next week. Now things are way more compressed in here. So maybe I should do it a little bit like this. I like this idea. Who knows how well this will work? If we'll have a full rainbow or what, but I can film a short. And actually I'll do that voiceover. I won't do the voiceover yet. I was like, I'll do the voiceover now. No, we should not do the voiceover. Rebecca, this is Swish DK for a short. See, normally in a stream, I would sit down while we're waiting on the other yarn. I would sit down and wait, but I know I can do this pretty quickly. I do want to make sure I can actually see. Okay, so you'll notice that I kind of shifted the yarn down a little bit. But I'm going to take some of this pink. I don't even know if I'm going to use up all the color. Pink, and work it through. And then sort of scrunch. And then I'm going to come in some of our orange dye. I'm saving some of it because I can bring it back, but I'm trying to work it through, maybe get it down the edges. Now, of course, this means this is not working as well as I wanted. That's fine. The yellow, we know it's going to be gone. Sorry, friend. You can see, like, as these colors are just moving, I was like, this is not what I intended, but you know what? Doesn't make it bad. And we didn't have very much green anyway. I love that it's like all this yellow that has come down, which is fine because we did not really have any green. So we'll bring in the green with our blue. Okay, and that is more blue. I'm going to bring in, whoop, the purple. Which is very, very pretty. This is not where I expected this to go. Oh man, it's really pretty though. It's really, really pretty. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Before I move things more, I'm gonna add some acid. Okay. And I'm gonna kind of push. Oh no, that's not quite what I wanted. I wanted to push that down a bit and push this down because I can add, I've got some more pink. Yeah, those greens, that blue is kind of just like moving down. You know, it is what it is. It's very pretty. It's not where I thought we were going to go. Now, unfortunately, I need to let this sit for a little bit. Maybe until the timer goes off before I try to move it, because there's just so much dye that if I move it now, things are going to just move around. Now, part of the issue here is that I have dyes that don't strike quickly, right? And I'm using a very cramped space. So what I tried to do was like shift the yarn to apply colors to various spots and then move. And it just didn't quite work the way I expected. But you know what? It's fine. I used up a couple of the pigments. I still have some blue, purple, and orange left. And I think the yarn is pretty. It's just different from what I think I was originally going for. Sometimes, oh, no. I need to do this as a voiceover. Sometimes I have a plan in my head and then things don't work out quite as I expected. I had some leftover neon acid dyes and I thought it'd be fun to dye some superwash yarn. And I knew I was going to be in a cramped shoebox, so I was like, okay, let's try to pour a color on, work it through, and then shift the yarn. But very quickly you could see the colors are moving down to the other side too much. And so by the time I got to the yellow, I was like, okay, there's not a lot of hope of yellow sticking around. And then I get to the blue, and I'm like, well, there's yellow everywhere now, so it's going to be green. And so then the purple isn't going to feel neon anymore. So we've got these like start of a neon rainbow, and then things are getting muddier and more muted, which, don't get me wrong, this is still gorgeous. This is a beautiful yarn. It's just not where I thought it might go in my head. Now, I have mixed all of these colors together before, and even muddied up, you do get a lot of fun, pretty colors. And so what we have here is not ugly by any stretch, but I think if I had wanted this to be the like more pure neon rainbow, I would have needed to have the yarn more spread out and not try to do this in a plastic shoebox. I still like where we ended up. And so you can let me know what you think of this yarn down in the comments. Oh my gosh. So freaking funny. Now, so for this yarn, what I will be doing, yes, ever increasing strong colors. And so that's still really fun. I think when I take it outside, I'm going to try to keep it level, but I'm going to try to also keep any of this from moving up here if I can. Now, when I say I want to wait 10 minutes, part of that is pretty arbitrary, right? I do know that these are colors that will, with this amount of acid, will start striking to the yarn. And so the longer I give it a minute to sit, the more likely we are to not have things move too much around when I go and move it. I'm going to go set these back aside. I'm going to have some containers to wash, but that might be like a next weekend or next week problem. This particular yarn will be going outside. I'll put a lid on, I'll take it outside, and I'm going to let it stay there over the weekend. And so then on Monday, I'll come back and see how we're doing and then finally heat set it. The shoe boxes, I really should get some bigger shoe boxes. Like even, I know some people will use like under the bed storage containers that are that big. I'm sure I could find a plastic container the size of a catering steam pan, which would be great. But one of the things I really like about having a shoebox like this is I feel like these shoe boxes are what, $1.50 at Target or at like Lowe's or something. Maybe they could be up to $3. This is very, very inexpensive. And especially outside, if it's so hot, you will get some heat. Now, fluorescent colors like this do need a little more heat. And so I do recommend, if you're going to buy one piece of dyeing equipment, I recommend getting a steamer basket. So what that is, when I say a steamer basket, I have, this is an 8-quart stainless steel dye pot. It has a steamer insert here in the top of it. And I use these over and over. Technically, these were, the pots I have were multi-pots, so they also have the pasta insert that goes in. I don't use that pasta insert quite as much, but if you have water here at the bottom of the pot, then you can get steam and you can heat set anything up here. Sometimes I might wrap it in plastic, other times I don't. And so having this is by far the most versatile tool. If you're going to get one thing, having this. And then for heat sources, you could get a small electric hot plate that you can use if you don't want to dye things in your kitchen. And so then a combination of like these inexpensive shoe boxes can make things more accessible to more people. And like if I'm tie-dyeing a t-shirt, instead of using like a Ziploc bag, I might pop it in one of these shoe boxes now. So you have options and they come in really, really handy. You just can't apply heat to them because they would melt. And that would be not so good. I'm checking in on our yarn at the stove. Ooh, things are looking like they're clearing up, except for there's like a spot on the side. You can shift it. It's definitely the case. Like, it's funny because I'm like, ooh, dyes and absorbing on the side of the non-superwash yarn. But I think that isn't, or sorry, not the non-superwash, of the like bare yarn. But I think that's less about it being a bare yarn and more about it potentially not being as warm down there. So I can't always make conclusions, you know? Okay, but while we're letting this sit, which is promptly, I mean, it's at the top of your screen, but it's promptly in the middle of my work area. Let's think about the colors we might want to use on our roving. Actually, I'm going to make another poll because I can always go upstairs. I have basically I have like over 80 different colors I could pick from. And I do think I want to do powders on it. Thank you, Tin Man. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to do another poll. All right, what colors should I use? Warm colors. Same as warm colors, like earthy colors. Cool colors. Because I'm not allowed to use neon. Not neon rainbow. All the colors, yes. My plan on the roving is going to be to I have words, I promise. My plan on the roving is to take dye powders and sort of speckle it on. And the thing with roving is that the like dyes will just sort of sink in and spread, and it's so nice. Now, you might wonder why I didn't bring a hot plate over onto the counter. Once I bring out the hot plate, then I'm kind of stuck. Because once the hot plate is warm, I can't move it. So if I think I might want to do something with, say, a plastic shoebox like I just did, or if I might want to do some countertop yarn dyeing, then once the heat source is here, then that's sort of where we are and where we're stuck. And so trying to think. Yeah. I'm trying to think about what I might want. But so actually, I have not done this yet. I am going to, while I take this outside, I'm going to insert an ad and be right back. And if you can still hear me, please give the video a thumbs up if you haven't already. Not everyone will see an ad. Don't worry about that. If you don't see one, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just the algorithm's plan. I forgot I should open both doors. Okay. Let's go very carefully outside. The nice thing is when it's cold, things don't move very much. You get a lot more diffusion with hot yarn or hot liquid. There was an ad for about 1 second. Woo! That's good for me. And I have no problem with people skipping ads. Like, that is totally fine. I haven't done my ad blocker rant in a while. Maybe I'll do that later. Okay, I'm going to bring over, making sure the edges are a little hot. And I got to make sure that we can see it, and I can't see my monitor. So therefore I can't see. Nope, you don't see that very well, do you? Okay, that's a little better. Now you can see. Okay. I brought the yarn back over from the stove because that's just what made sense for me today. But you can see that we are nice and steamy and hot. And I already checked at the stove. And yeah, there's still a little bit of some color there for whatever reason. I don't know if there was just less heat on our bare yarn, but I'm seeing some like pigment over there, which, you know, sometimes you can draw a conclusion, but I would expect the bare yarn to absorb color better than the other. So now I'm going to flip it. Ho ho! And guess what we see? I don't hate the amount of blue that we have left in here. Now, as I go through and add more color on this other side, even though we're not on the heat source right now, things are interesting. What? Is this superwash? I'm gonna have to go look at that because this is perplexing, you guys. This is very perplexing. I'm thinking I made a boo-boo. I need to go and find the yarn. What? Dang it! I made a boo-boo. Superwash. Superwash. Ah, there we go. Well, I made an error. Okay, here's what's going to happen. The blue yarn was superwash, you guys. So there being a little bit of dye left over here did not I was not concerned when there was a little bit of dye left over here. What surprised me was seeing how little coverage of color we had over here and how much we have there. This is why colors were feeling more intense on this yarn. They weren't spreading as far. They weren't spreading all the way through. So I completely messed up this comparison. Now, I do think I have 2 more skeins of Clarity yarn upstairs. I don't know if it's superwash or non-superwash. And maybe, I don't know why I would have 4 from 2 different orders because they're in 2 different spots. Maybe I decided to get superwash because originally I wanted to speckle on this. I don't know because I didn't write it down. But what I'm going to do is take our non-superwash yarn over to my steamer basket, and we're going to steam set this for, gosh, 30 minutes, sure. I need to make sure that there's still plenty of water on the bottom of the steamer basket so I don't, yeah. That's the big thing with steamer baskets. You want to make sure they don't run dry. And we're going to take this yarn and spread it out. Now we have like a lot more liquid than we need in here, but we have things more spread. We're going to be able to work these colors through. So I'm going to go put my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves back on. We're going to apply dye to this side, work it through, and focus on creating a beautiful yarn here, not worrying about covering it up. And I'm going to reflect on my lack of observation. Okay, this is a voiceover for a short. I make mistakes sometimes. I set up this project intending to do a comparison of starting with a bare yarn versus a dyed yarn. And, you know, I filmed all these clips. I'm like, oh, it's all wool of the Andes, bulky versus worsted, but same fiber content. I missed a very important detail. My blue yarn was superwash. The bare yarn I pulled was not. I have superwash wool of the Andes on hand. I could have done the comparison the way I wanted, but I messed up and I neglected to do so. Now, I'm still creating beautiful yarn here. It's just not the comparison I wanted to have in my video. And because, you know, the colors are spreading more through the non-superwash yarn than they are the superwash. And the moment that I realized the difference was when I flipped everything over and realized how much of the undyed yarn we had on our blue versus the white. And that just was not what I had expected at all. So I carried on, and we have a bunch of yarn here that is very beautiful, and it's still probably a fun video, but I am still just laughing at this mistake that I made. Okay. Voiceover for adding the color. Things have cooled off while I've sat around reflecting on my mistakes. But as I applied the dye and worked it through, I did still use a spoon because I didn't want to hurt my fingertips by dipping them in steamy water. You know how much you can handle, but the gloves I'm using don't provide any heat protection, so therefore I'm not using my hands this time to work those colors through. I do think we're going to have a really pretty yarn, and if there are going to be a little bit of hints of blues left over, it's going to feel like clouds, and I really like the effects that we have going on here. And so I'm going to focus on creating some beautiful yarn, thinking less about the comparison I set out to do originally. Okay, I put the camera back on 4K. I am going to run upstairs. Oh my gosh, I am like dying over here. Haha! I mean, I'm literally dyeing yarn, but I am like, what? Okay, I'm gonna run upstairs because I'm so curious. I'll be right back. The other two skeins are also superwash. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I'm just giving myself a minute before I go in. I'm like, why when I have 4 skeins of the same yarn base in the same color, but in 2 different spots? The yarn was probably on sale during the big sale one year. And so I probably bought it on clearance. And you know, had an idea. And so then like I may have bought more on a second order or something. But oh my gosh, I am just completely floored. Oh man. Now I have a comparison of superwash versus non-superwash. Yeah, I do. Um, it's just that wasn't what I was. It's like, you know, the like sound, the like person who was like, it's this is what I wanted. Like, this is what I got. And I just no, oh man. I mean, I find this hilarious. Like, of all the kinds of mistakes to make, this is a low stakes project for me to do that. Now, the question is, do I title the video, I made a huge mistake? Or do I not and let this like come up over the course of the video? That is the question. All right, getting suited back up. And of course now I'm realizing I'm thirsty, but I have the mask on, so is what it is. Where are my glasses? It's like I'm checking my pockets. You guys, they are on my eyes. My safety glasses are literally on my eyes. Where are my glasses? Oh my gosh. But hey, at least this shows how seriously I take safety, right? Okay, let's go in with the yellow first. Now, sometimes when I'm doing projects like this, I'll add some more there. I will, when I flip the yarn, I will try to apply colors in approximately the same space as I did before. So you'll notice that I added the yellow on top of yellow. And not everything is going to be perfect, not by any stretch. But yeah, I mean, this time I'm definitely starting with the more accenty colors, because then I can go heavier with the red. The yarn moth is really pretty. Oh, that is so pretty. Now things, because it's hot, things are going to strike faster and aren't going to spread as far, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Do some golden poppy. Where do we want to go? Golden poppy can definitely feel a little bit more orange. But it depends on how heavy you do it. Oh my gosh, I'm still reeling from this. Oh man, I can't find, like, where else did I add it? There we go. I mean, oh, I can't believe that that's what I did. This is so funny to me. I just can't believe that I was that obtuse. And well, the funniest part about it is that I was like, oh, I found my stash. Because sometimes I have yarn in so many places. There's some yarn bases that have dedicated shelves. And then there are other yarn bases that clearly don't. There are other yarn bases that sometimes I don't have a good way to sort them. So what I do, as I go in with my oxblood, is I will, what's it? Let me finish this one pass. Okay, so then there are other colors or other yarns that sometimes it's like, oh, I don't have time to unpack this right now. I'm going to go ahead and pop this, I'm going to go ahead and pop this yarn into this like Ziploc baggie where it'll be like nice and safe and secure, and we'll worry about it later. Okay, and so sometimes that's what I choose to do, and it makes sense. But okay, I think that maybe I'm gonna add a little more pink in there. It totally makes sense. Because you know we have like the guest room, and so then I'm like, okay, I have just like bins. I'm like, all right, this yarn is just gonna go into this random bin that I have, and that'll just be fine, right? It'll be fine there. And yeah, because I was like, I don't always have like good spots for everything to go. That's fine. All right, I think this is really pretty. And yeah, as for the yarn mop, when the steamer basket opens up, then that can go in there. Take off the mask. Okay, I did stop recording. Hopefully I recorded that whole thing. All right, I'm happy with the coverage. Again, if we have a little bit of the blue peeking through, I'm not going to worry about it. I think this yarn is beautiful. I'm going to take this to the stove and heat it for 30 minutes to let all the color absorb. It's just so funny because when there wasn't, all right, I'm going to need to set a timer for about 13 minutes after the first timer goes off. This is just so funny. Like when I was like, oh, there's a little bit color left in that one spot. That's not that big a deal because it wasn't that big a deal, right? I'm like, that just is what it is. Okay. And it wasn't a big deal. It really, really wasn't. But, you know, sometimes it's like in hindsight, you make observations for a reason, right? I share my thoughts because sometimes it's something that's really real. Oh man, this is when I regret that I didn't create a front-facing camera today, so that way I could sit down and talk while the timer was going on. Let's see. You feel lava, sun, blood, and fire. The colors you use and get makes you feel calm and good. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, let's go look at this roving pole. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Ooh, earthy colors. How do I? Okay, here we go. Earthy colors. That sounds fun. Okay, and I happen to have some earthy colors on hand. Not in that. Okay, we're going to do avocado, which is both like bluish but also brown. I'm going to do sea spray, moss green. Those two may be similar, but they might spread differently. We're going to have pecan brown. Olive brown. What do you guys think? Do I need like a pink? Some Valentine blush. Do I want another blue? I went not for a blue, but for a bluish green. Here we go. Okay, what pot? I did not like that sound. Oh, steamer basket, you calm down. You guys calm down too. Okay. Hey, Rebecca, this is for the roving video. You do not have an introduction for it. I pre-soaked it for a couple of hours. Oh, this should be, yeah. I pre-soaked the fiber for a couple of hours. I think that there's 16 cups of water in there. So that may also need a voiceover. Or that could be part of the intro. There's no acid in it yet. And I was working on this during a live stream and chat voted for earthy colors. And so this is the palette that I pulled. And we're going to play. And I don't know if I'm going to aim for something gradienty or just use everything all over. And I mean, we're just going to have fun with it. Ooh, but initially you should swatch each of the different colors. Like, do like a line of each one and then go wild and random. That's what we should do. All right. My live stream chat voted for me to use like an earthy color palette. So I pulled some greens and browns, but then also some more blue colors and a pink. Maybe it'll feel foresty, maybe floral. I don't know. We're going to play with the colors and see where we end up. But the Dharma acid dyes I pulled are pecan brown, olive brown, sea spray, avocado, moss green, Valentine blush, and forest green. Now, some of these colors, and I'm looking at you guys, may break, especially with the roving, as some of the pigments strike faster than others. But I think that going for something more muted overall and having that earthy feel, I think that this combination will be really, really good and beautiful. I'm gonna need a yarn mop. You like the pink? I'm glad I pulled the pink. It's fun, especially with roving, to have like a color that feels less expected sometimes. And so, yeah, I'm happy with that palette. I need to think about my yarn mop though. because there's like the other mops. And so here is my dilemma. Okay. I don't have as much Swish DK yarn on hand at the moment. I need to get more next time it goes on sale. I don't know if it's sold out. In general, my shop stock of, oh, and I should, speaking of the shop, actually, we can go there together. I needed audio. Okay. So if I'm at my shop, oh, and by the way, you can get the original 4 nights of the Spring Mini Skein mini-series yarns. Now, just the yarn, no kit and everything. And so, yeah, and if you go on, you can see like the different yarn bases that are available for each one. But if I'm looking over here, I mean, I guess there's only 74 colors in fingering weight right now. But it's funny because, you know, sometimes I'll be like, okay, let's look and see what I have in the shop and then decide what colors I want to do. But this is all I have for DK. Like my DK bin is pretty empty. Empty. And so I'm like, oh, I need more DK yarn. But it's, yeah. I mean, I suppose the same is true for like worsted. What I have still, and especially like bulky and cotton and lace. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I only have that. Yeah, so I think that there's times when I'm like, and this is what I'm debating, because I did just do that rainbow that we took outside the DK. But yeah, I'm like, oh, sometimes I make the decision about the yarn base I use in videos based on a lab partner picking the yarn base, right? That makes sense. Sometimes I pick on, okay, this is what I need in my shop. And other times I'm like, this is what I have a lot of. So those are all the things that kind of go through my brain as I am picking stuff. Oh, good. I did put those other guys away. Okay. So right now I have a skein of hawthorn pre-soaking, but there's a different video that at this stage, I don't know if I'm going to get to today. No, I probably will not. I may just have to bite the bullet and re-dry the yarn, or I can let it pre-soak all weekend and do this on Monday. And I might do that on Monday. Okay, I'm going to go get a skein of Stroll, I think. No, we'll get the DK. And I'm going to pre-soak this just briefly in that water with acid I set up earlier. How much impact Well, this is a good question. I'm curious, can you recommend a good sock pattern that you can use with Advent yarn? Let me try to see, I may have some things. How much impact does dry yarn have on the dyeing process? Great question. If we have a yarn that is pretty absorbent, it being dry does not have a huge impact on the process. It can sometimes affect, like if you want to get something with tonal variation, starting dry will allow some areas of the yarn to soak in before others, letting them get more pigment. And so you'll get more uneven coverage if that's what you're going for. If you want more even coverage, absolutely start with pre-soaked yarn. If you're doing something speckly, having a brief pre-soak because there's going to be some white left behind isn't a big deal. So it depends on the coverage, I think, of what you're going for. And since this guy's going to be a yarn mop, it's okay if there's an area that is a little bit drier than others. And so I could be okay just dunking it and then going for it. At this stage, I'm waiting 3 minutes for the steamer basket to open up so I can put this in before I decide to do that. Now, here's what I need to go look for. As for the Advent yarn or the Hanukkah yarn, okay, I have a blog post that I'll put in, and these are free scrappy knitting and crochet patterns. So like for the Hanukkah samplers, which come with usually 8 to 10-gram mini skeins. Yeah, this one was a free ravel. There's like the scrappy socks pattern. And you know, that they recommend for stash busting or minis. And so I just tried to find a bunch of free patterns and describe them in crochet ones that are things people could use with scraps or with like mini skeins and things like that. Actually, the story of how ChemKnits started originally was, I mean, because this was pre-Ravelry when there was this easy database that you could search for patterns. But I wanted to make like an ear flap hat for Keith. And I was going around and I was just looking for patterns, and I started keeping a Word document, and I was like, okay, these are the patterns, and I was making notes on each one to try to figure out which one I would want to use. And I was like, oh my gosh, this isn't chunky enough, or I don't like the color work on this one, or this one has no color work. And I'm going through and thinking about it. And I was like, gee, I wish that this list already existed out there. And I'm like, well, I'm doing all this work already. Maybe I should just start a blog and put this out there, and then maybe that'll be useful for someone else. And so that's like how the blog started, was me like trying to keep track of my own searches and notes. And so now like pages like that, I mean, actually now the problem with search is, because I used to have a lot of pages that did very well SEO wise accidentally, because I would have, you know, ear flap hat written however many times on there, right? And the like, so I do, and so then like it's just now with AI, I'm like, gee, even if I have resources on my website, like searches aren't going to encourage people to even go to the website anymore, where I have, you know, some affiliate links. I still have ads there. I don't make very much money from the blog itself anymore, so I don't update it very often, but I do still occasionally try to. But yeah, so I'm like, oh man, the way that the like internet and everything has just shifted. It's like there's this whole new universe, and having free tutorials on the internet is not a way to get eyeballs on your website anymore, because of the way your words will just be summarized, right? Okay. It's hot. I just removed our non-superwash yarn from the steamer basket. I'm going to set it aside to cool. And I'm going to pop our non-superwash yarn mop in for 30 minutes. Okay, this is going to go in. I'm going to need to rinse out. I need to set a timer for, is it 13 minutes for our other yarn? Okay. Now this is going to need to be rinsed out before I use it again because there's a little bit of dye on it. Ooh, goody, I see a question. Before we go to, and we can start working on the roving, since I want to do that cold. Anyway, let's see. Question about dyeing acid pH. Okay. You're in Boston and you've noticed straight tap water is roughly 5. What pH should it be aiming for? For acid dye, use citric acid powder. This is a good question and one that I don't have a good answer to because I realized at one point that my litmus paper was off. And so because my litmus paper was off, I was like, I therefore don't have a good sense of the pH that I'm actually dyeing with. So I'm also in the greater Boston area, and my tap water is definitely acidic. I usually say slightly acidic. So I usually will use a ratio of 2 tablespoons of white vinegar per 8 cups of water. Now, I forget... This is me going to do bad science. I feel like the ratio, like I think the ratio of citric acid to vinegar, like you need like 1/12 of the amount of citric acid as you do vinegar, something like that. And so, but I don't know if that's if you make like a 5% citric acid solution. So you definitely need, you don't need 2 tablespoons of citric acid. That's like way too much. So this is me not giving a very good answer. Because I use vinegar more. Because it was when I was doing something with pH using citric acid and vinegar, and then I realized I'm like, wait, it's giving me this pH for the pH of vinegar when like that's not correct. That's like way too high. And so then I'm like, okay, this litmus paper I have is just off. This does remind me, and I'm going to write it down, that I do want to do something with pH. So I need to buy, nope, that's shorts planning. Let's go to this. I have a really long text document that I use for stuff. This is like the best organization ever, right? Okay. Buy new litmus paper, do a pH video. How much citric acid is. Okay. And I would say that, because I feel like I did do a video once where I made a stock solution of citric acid and I did some comparisons there. It might have been when I was trying to dull my Stellina on purpose. But see, there are differences between citric acid and vinegar beyond just the pH. And I think that like citric acid is a stronger acid in general than vinegar. And so that can come into play at times. And by stronger acid, I mean it's more likely to donate the proton to the solution. Yeah. So luckily you died at a local makerspace. So when you wanted to test the pH of the tap water, you were given like 5 different brands of test strips and they all had the same result. Awesome. Because yeah, I definitely don't think because I think I was getting that my vinegar was like a 5. And I'm like, wait, that's not accurate. Like if just from Google. And so I'm like, something is off. There should be an expiration date on the litmus paper. So let me see. Okay, so it's giving me like about a 6 for my tap water. Or actually, maybe that's a 5. But see, it didn't significantly change in the water with vinegar. And let's put this in the straight vinegar. Yeah, because maybe it's saying the vinegar is like a 4, which I don't. Maybe that's saying that's more of a 3. Okay, this is like one of the pre-soaks. Maybe that's a 5. Yeah, see that I think that the difference is actually bigger, and so I think that this is kind of crap. Okay, yeah, it's definitely like the pre-soak. This is definitely way more yellow. It's like, but I think it's, yeah, I don't think that my litmus paper is very good. Because I'm like, it's showing shifts, but I should get something that is less broad anyway. Yeah, because I forget now what the pH of vinegar is supposed to be. But you can definitely get more detailed pH strips. And so some of these are probably like 15 years old. I don't know. I think I have them from like some lab days. And so, yeah. I was like, ah! But I definitely don't use that much vinegar. But yeah, it's like, what should the pH of 5% acetic acid be? Let's look this up. What is the pH of 5% vinegar? Fine. Yeah, it should be between a 2.4 and a 2.5. And so it should, even on that paper, look more visually distinct. And so I think I need some litmus paper that goes like, that isn't trying to do the whole scale. And so, yeah, I mean, I think like that concentration of water to vinegar is what works really well for me. Like I will see acid I start to bind to yarn without me adding acid with my tap water. And so that is, I guess, something else that's worth considering. But I guess the pH also depends on what you're trying to achieve, because with neon colors and like Caribbean blue, I definitely want a lower pH. With those are with the neons. With non-superwash yarns, I definitely need a lower pH, you know? So those are all things to consider. Let's do What, the pH of vinegar is lower than you thought? Well, and so the pH is not the thing necessarily that is like the scary thing when it comes to acids. It's more of like the intensity of, like, acetic acid is a pretty weak, what you would consider a weak acid. And so yeah, that's something that has to be considered for like how things react as well. Okay. We have 16 cups of water in here. And let's go ahead and start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I need to add more vinegar into my cup. Try to not make a mess. Six tablespoons of white vinegar. Now, my tap water is definitely a little bit acidic. And so you may find that you need to add more acid. That's what I do. And I was just having a conversation with people about how I need to get better litmus paper to try to evaluate the pH of things better. But right now, I'm going to pop on my deluxe rubber respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves, and quickly swatch our 8 colors of dye. So that way I can see how they're interacting with our roving before deciding what I want our main colors to be, and I add things more randomly all over. Okay. Do that there, and let's see. I did not say. I prefer vinegar to citric acid for 2 reasons. 1, because I can smell it, and so therefore I can remember if I've added it. But the other thing, and I think it changes the pH a little slower, which can be handy, but I think the other thing is it's what I'm used to. And because it's what I've used so much, that I know exactly how much to use and I have a good feel for it. And that's the biggest reason. Citric acid, especially when you buy it in bulk, is cheaper. There are many, many perks there, but yeah, I mean, I think that having the vinegar, plus then I have the vinegar, sometimes I'll use it on weeds outside my house, and it's handy. Hello, you just ordered some oxblood red. Woohoo! Oh, I don't have the oxblood red for the merino roving though. I used that on the other yarn. Oh, but your merino roving maybe. So it's like, this is Peruvian Highland wool. Haha. Okay. Because I used the oxblood earlier. I was like, oh no, confusion. Keep the questions coming. I absolutely love it. All right, good. This is a time lapse. I love time lapse. But I want to make this 4K. So remember to do. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat there. Because I'm going to want to remove that yarn eventually, so that way I can heat this. Let's see. All right. Oh, I am recording. Yarn mop. You do want your hands to be dry as you can, before going into the powders. You know, maybe I'll not swatch them like all the way down. I'll just do like a little swatch in the middle. Okay, that is the olive brown. Pecan brown. I love pecan brown, but I'm a cool toned girly overall, and so it is a favorite of mine. Trying to get the dye off my fingertips. Now this sea spray that I'm using is the old formula of sea spray. The newer one is a little different. I forget if it's a little more green or a little more blue. So take that with a grain of salt. Actually, a lot of these dyes are, quote, old. Sometimes I get questions with how old your acid dyes can be. And, like, if someone is destashing acid dye powder, is that something you should go for or not? And I'm of the opinion, go for it. I am team go for it. Oh, so there are only 7 colors? I'm doing these a little closer together than I needed to. This is a forest green. What was I saying? Yeah, as long as they're not like completely clumped, then you should be okay. Okay. We've got moss, green. I'm going a little bigger with that because I have a feeling the moss green and the avocado are the 2 colors I'm going to use the most. Like, I'm expecting that Valentine blush to only be an accent, and the question is, how much of the 2 browns will I use? I love moss green. It definitely breaks, though. So does avocado. Avocado gives a more... I might not need the forest green. Because avocado does finish brown, but it's giving some similar notes. The sea spray will be more blue. It looks similar right now, but it will be more distinct. Did I forget a color? No. Okay. I'm going to give things a minute to let things continue to spread out, but the olive brown breaks with a little bit of pink that's really cool. Pecan brown doesn't really break. The sea spray, this is an older version, and I can see it breaking into green and blue. Very pretty. Valentine blush is sort of a very warm-toned pink. It leans almost a little bit like yellowish, in my opinion. Very, very slightly. Forest green may be redundant, and I think I won't use it because a lot of those notes are both in the sea spray and in our avocado. I went bigger with the avocado and the moss green because I think those are the colors I might use the most of. But the avocado definitely will break a little bit brown eventually, which we may or may not see here with these swatches. But I feel like from the avocado, I'm getting some of those notes that we would have had from the forest green. And so I'm excited to like build and play with these colors more and sort of see where they take us. I'm loving the like little bit of purple notes I'm feeling from the olive right now. Yeah, but I think I'm gonna let this sit for about 12 minutes just to see what's gonna happen before we move forward. Okay. This is a little bit of B-roll of the olive brown, the pecan brown, and the sea spray. a little bit of B-roll of our moss and avocado. Oh, I'm seeing some of the brown notes in the avocado come through. Okay. And while we do that, I'm going to very, very carefully move my camera over to the stove. I'll show you the yarn in a minute. I'm over at the stove and I just turned off the heat right here. Oh, there are my tongs. And I'm not even checking to see if all the color has absorbed because I'm assuming that it has because it did last time. Ooh, I do see a couple hints of like the original bare yarn peeking through, which again, I love. It feels almost cloud-like. All right, I'm gonna set this aside to cool completely so we can wash it. And again, when the yarn mop finishes heating, then I'll set that aside to cool as well. Here we go. Very pretty. Okay, I see some great questions that I'm going to come to. The good news is that I'm going to be able to have space on the stove for this to go eventually. Now, I think I'll go a little bit randomly with some of these questions. Oops, I want to raise this again. One of the questions was, do we expect breaking colors? And yes, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but yes, a bit, because I specifically picked some colors that do break. So we might get some colors and dimension in here because of the fact they break. But also, since this is non-superwash roving, some of that breaking might just feel like the different colors we're using overlapping with one another. And if you're curious, breaking is when you have a color mixture that separates into different colors. And so, for example, right here with the sea spray, I'm seeing blue and some lime green in here in a very subtle way. And that breaking is happening because there's a mixture of pigments in there. And so some of the more blue pigments might hit here, some of the more yellow ones hit there, and that's giving us those different colors. Similarly, in the avocado, to make it more of an earthy green, in addition to some of the more teal colors that are in there, there's this like rust colored brown. And there's not as much of it. And that color takes longer to dissolve. So sometimes it shows up a little bit later. And we can see that in here. The olive brown, I think I always forget what that color does. But like, look at that swatch there. What I'm seeing right here feels almost like aubergine. It is so pretty that I'm probably going to lean into that and the moss a lot and let a lot of these other colors be a little bit accents. Yeah, and so then there's some colors where like avocado is one where like you'll just mix the color up, see this really pretty color, use it on the yarn, and at the bottom of the cup, the color will shift. And that is something that has surprised me, but it's because some of the, I don't know if the powders are milled differently. And so some of them are milled a little bit thicker, and so therefore they don't dissolve as quickly. But yeah, that's what we get. Let's see. Carla's been spinning some roving for Tour de Fleece. Ooh, I've never used the Malabrigo Noob roving. So do you think there's anything about their process that makes their fibers so compacted? Like, so is the fiber hard to draft and spin, or is it just sort of very dense versus being fluffy? And so that, I don't know about their dyeing process. And yeah, so I don't really have a good answer there. What about ages of other types of dyes? Ooh, that's a good question. I've used really old like RIT dyes and still had good results. The concern with like a dye like a RIT dye is that they're in water. And so when anything is in water, then a reaction could take place. And a reaction could take place, and then you could get some degradation of the pigments or something. And so the color that you get from a 10-year-old bottle of RIT dye might be different from a brand new bottle. But also they're thinking about this, and it's a quote shelf stable product. And so that's probably something that they've tested and product tested. Acid dyes in water will last a very long time as long as they don't like spoil. Sometimes some of the colors can crash out or clump and aren't as soluble, but in general, they work pretty well. Fiber reactive dyes, if they're in a condition, if you mix up them as like a tie dye in an alkaline environment, so with a higher pH, they will react with water. And so this is a reason why when they say, hey, when you're mixing up your one-step tie-dye, you want to use it like as quickly as not as quickly as possible, but you want to use it as fresh as possible. That's because over time, less and less of the pigment will be able to interact with your cotton fiber. Now, I would imagine that if I mixed up a fiber reactive dye and made a dye stock in my slightly acidic tap water, I think that that won't be as big of a problem. Okay. I don't know that it would degrade as fast. And I honestly don't know if the degradation that happens in alkaline conditions, if you switch it to acid, if you then could use it as an acid dye, or if the functional groups that are getting degraded that are reacting with water makes it much harder for it to bind as an acid dye. So some of those things chemically are things I don't know. But I think a lot of things that as long as they're in powder form, they're not going to be able to do much of anything to have any kind of reaction. And so, yeah. Let's see. So Noob is dense and hard to draft. It took some effort to pull it apart. You even steamed it and it helped, but it still work. So that maybe it's a bit felted. Okay, dense but not felted. No crunchy sound when you pull it apart or draft. Okay. Someone in your spinning guild told you to put Noob on your blending board, and that helped a lot. A lot easier than steaming it open. Wow. How long do you think you have with a fiber reactive dye once it's mixed? Well, I have a video of using 6-month-old one-step tulip tie-dye to dye some wool yarn, and I got a really great red. So you can use old dyes and get color. I have not done, it would be such a long scale experiment where I have not taken like cotton minis and like mixed up the tulip dye and then tried to apply the same amount of dye to the yarn like in stages to see how it would affect the color. I haven't done that. So I have definitely had good results with dyes that aren't fresh and new and mixed that day. But so I think it's what you're going for. So I don't have a good answer for that one. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that if it's not pleasant to spin, then it might be a little bit like felted, I guess. But I don't know. I need to go back to my Dying to Spin series. But of these colors, I don't know if you can tell, but the avocado has really like sunk in pretty far. Some of these colors haven't quite as much. I think maybe I was lighter when I applied it, but it's so fun. I'd say that the roving has like 2 layers here that like over time when I do this, then you end up getting really good coverage. And that's really, really fun. All right, we got a minute left. Okay, oh yeah, I think day-old solutions should be totally fine. I'll talk more about that in a minute. I will be on a brief break. I'll be back in just a minute. I'm back and the timer just went off, so it's pretty perfect. I'll show you the yarn mop. I need another pan. And I'll need to remember that I turned off my steamer basket, but that'll be okay. I can turn it back on as needed. Here is our yarn mop. Very pretty. All right, what do I need to do? I think what I need is to take, oh goody, that's not warm anymore. That first catering steam pan. I'm going to give it a quick rinse. Not a full-on wash yet. But this frees up the stove for when I'm ready. Yeah, I would say that, I mean, if you're trying to get cotton like a really dark saturated color, then I would want to use fresh. I mean, cotton could be annoying to dye anyway because like there's so much rinsing anyway. So the thing with using an older solution is you might need more of it to obtain the same color, and there might be more rinsing after the fact. But I think that if you're mixing up your dyes without soda ash in the solution, they should last longer and be less of an issue. But again, that's me without knowing the actual mechanism. Okay, so let me see. Oh, I need to change the battery. It has been like 10, 12 minutes. You really feel that breaking in the avocado. But otherwise, things seem to have stayed in place pretty well. I mean, there's definitely spreading, but not as much as maybe I would have expected. And so let's get ready and have some fun. And change the battery pack. Do, do, do. Do, 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 do. Okay. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. And I'm going to go respirator mask everything back on. My safety glasses are on my eyeballs. I have pressed record. I gotta get these gloves back on. Okay, now my plan is to randomly apply these colors all over. So I'm coming in with our moss green now. And not only am I doing, I'll come in and be like a little heavier in some spots, but I'm really going, like doing a almost continuous layer. But as the dyes sort of sink in, they're gonna spread some, and sometimes it feels like they all kind of go in a direction. I don't know. It feels like that when I added the little bits of colors, things didn't spread that much. But you can kind of feel the colors spread as I work my way through. And now I'm coming back and just being a little bit heavier and more intentional in some areas. It is better to apply the dyes in a very light layer and continue to build it and add more than it is to be really heavy, because then you could have a dye clump. And on yarn, it's less of a big deal. On fiber, then it could be more of a pain to deal with that later. And you always want dry fingers. Okay, but I wanted that moss to be like a main color. Now I'm grabbing the olive brown. And I'm going a little bit all over with every color is kind of my plan. But being like a little bit more just random with the placement. What's funny is coming off of my gloves, it feels like a very warm toned brown, but on the fiber, it's giving these like purple notes, which are really, really fun. Now, you can really see how the sea spray and that pink are popping against everything. I'm bringing over the pecan brown, which is one of probably the most pigmented colors that I have here that I'm using. It's funny how much you still feel those lines of color, but it's also because they've really sunk in already. Okay, let's get some avocado. Now, the fact that some of these colors break is going to be less and less obvious now that we are dealing with so many colors all over. But it is a fun feature. Woohoo! And something about like doing this, it's about being patient too. Okay, I'm going to come in with our pink now. And a lot of those other colors, you don't really feel them standing out. But I'm just bringing in some hints of the pink throughout the fiber. And you know, I may build those up more, but also I might not. It really depends. Okay, and the sea spray, I'm doing something similar. I'm aiming for areas of the fiber that have less pigment on it already. And I'm trying to be somewhat even with my placement. So this is so pretty. All right, I'm going to take, as we wait, I'm going to take my yarn mop and pop it in a steamer basket for a couple of minutes, just so that way it can absorb some of this color, because we're not done.
are looking very pigmented right now, but they're not going to be this saturated because we've added the dye onto the surface. It hasn't sunk down very far. So let's go ahead and wait 5 to 10 minutes and then we'll come back.
Hooray! Okay. I need to set a timer. It's funny how much like those little lines that we had at the beginning, you can still kind of see and feel. I'm going to change your resolution, or not your resolution, your exposure so you can see the colors a little better. And I'll see the question in a minute because I feel, you know, the camera keeps trying to adjust. There we go. Can I zoom more? Not that much. There we go. It's a little bigger. You can very much see some of these lines still. And it's what's funny is because I have so many like little spots of color here, we're not feeling the large chunks of like the speckles spread. The goal here, and we could end up with some speckles being on the fiber. The goal is for the fiber to, is not for the fiber to feel speckled. The goal is for these colors to sink through all the fiber and have something that is variegated and watercolory. Right now it's feeling very impressionistic, which I'm also honestly okay with. It is striking to me. So hard to not look and see what's beneath the surface. Also, I know as soon as I apply heat, things are going to spread and move. I'll be right back. This fiber from my Dyeing to Spin series, I dyed in a similar, applying the dye powder on effect. And this is sort of where we were with one of the bobbins. The other bobbin is mostly done. Eventually I'll come back to it. But yeah, just applying the powders and sort of letting it sink in and having these pops of colors. I could bring a spoon and work it through, and we might do that after. just to like see. There's no reason why I can't work it through. But sometimes I like seeing what diffusion is going to do. I have some shorts with that as well. Let me see. There were some comments as I was walking around. There's no problem with using fiber reactive dyes on wool at all. And I know a lot of dyers that prefer fiber reactive dyes for dyeing wool. It's sort of like, think about a Venn diagram where you have like fiber reactive dyes is a circle, right? But then surrounding that circle is a circle of acid dyes. So all fiber reactive dyes are also acid dyes, but not all acid dyes are fiber reactive dyes, okay? And so, yeah, which I think is good. Let's see, you live in Arizona where it's hot, and my video's been really helpful. Oh, I'm so glad that I could help you. My pleasure. The pink, yes, it's feeling very Monet. And like I love impressionistic paintings and things. And so the like watercolory feel. I also really like random color placement because otherwise I think about it too much. Oh man. You love variegated, but sometimes patterns disappear. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that variegated yarns are great for garter stitch and stockinette. And then there's other things like brioche. I love using really variegated yarns for color work, especially if you have something, a bright variegated yarn, and mix it with like a black. And then you can get like a stained glass kind of feel to your project. I think that that is awesome and stunning. The my brain just like left the room. And I think that, yeah, but I think in general, and I do have a video that I did, an overdying video, where I took some very variegated yarns, high contrast, and talked about toning it down to make something that is lower contrast that maybe you could use with more stitch patterns. And they're still variegated, like, but it's just less extreme and more subtle. And so that was the way that I was like overdying it. And so sometimes you may want to transform something for various reasons, and that's all okay. Now, what I can say here now is that a lot of this still looks very dark and punchy. Some of those original colors that we've added at this stage are now soft and subtle. And I think that if I weren't streaming, I would let them sit longer before coming back, or even go and heat it in the middle, you know, but there's more time on the timer, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. A lot of times in a video, I do try to be very precise with the time I say I'm waiting for something. And the yarn mop in the steamer basket, it's a little bit warm, but I didn't even have the steamer basket on. Okay. You're learning how to knit cables? Yeah, if you have a really complicated yarn and you want to do thin cables, then like, yeah, that would be pretty hard. After 8 minutes or so, I would say some of those original colors that we had have softened a bit, but we still feel the punch of a lot of our speckles. And so I'm just going to bring a spoon and push on it just a little bit, just to show that pigment has not struck. Now, I'm not going to want to do that all over. I'm going to do that in a couple of spots just for fun. Just to like see a little bit what we're working with. Gosh, but see, even like this original area, you can see some of that actually is staying put. I'm like debating, you know what? We're going for it. Now, the nice thing with it being cold, and not having applied heat to it yet, is that I'm less concerned about felting because I'm using the smooth edge of a spoon as I'm working this down. Now, part of you might be screaming, no, Rebecca, no. But don't worry, I'm going to add more dye on top. Like, we're not done. I'm just kind of making sure something is here, and we've just made this really earthy and fun. And if I were to lift and move, there are elements of the way the colors have gone through all the way to the bottom already, and will continue to move through, especially once we eventually provide heat. So I'm going to mask back up and we're going to add more color. I definitely had a moment of regret when I first did that. But look at those lines that are still there. But actually, before I do, that original Sea Spray line and Valentine Blush line that I added back when we swatched, those are still there. So yes, we have spread a lot of stuff, but some of the pigments, even at room temperature, with acid, but not having applied heat yet, some things are starting to strike to our yarn. But again, let's go add more color. Voiceover. Now, the roving is probably 2 layers thick. And so you might be wondering, is the bottom going to be all white? And no, there could be some white areas, sure, but there will be some color down there eventually, and not just because we pressed it down, but because of the way these colors sort of dissolve and will spread, and things are going to diffuse and move, especially once we start applying heat to everything. And so it's just kind of worth keeping that in mind as you're playing with colors. Now, this time as I add more dye, I am starting with the pops of color. I'm started with the Valentine Blush and the Sea Spray because those are the colors that I want to make sure stand out, and I want to kind of have them put in place before I go heavier with our moss green near the end. But we have something very swampy and earthy, and I love it as it is. And maybe I would have stopped before adding more color, except I know things are going to be lighter once it dries. And so that's why we're adding this other layer of dye now, so we can sort of maybe get closer to where we were in the intermediate section. Okay. Now I think before I do that, I am going to scarf down a cheese stick because my stomach is starting to rumble. And this will be the last project I work on today, or at least on camera. Because Keith will be home in not too long, and I'm very excited because he's been gone all week. Yeah, people needed the don't touch emote. Let me find that. I had some regrets as soon as I touched it. but knew that if I didn't keep going, I'd probably have more regrets. Oh. I went to take a sip of my soda and it was empty. And of course my brain goes to like the Pirates of the Caribbean. But why is the rum gone? Oh man. But we wanted earthy. So, oh, that's really good. Okay. Oh. Back to 4K, Rebecca. Oh, I'm in 4K. I was in 4K. Fine. Okay, let's do this. Bring in the pink. I'm leaning in to some of these spots. And yes, I leaned into my little line as well because I thought that would be funny. I mean, it's the thing like when you go and spin it, right? Like you can draft things in so many different ways that having a line across the fiber, you might not even necessarily be able to tell because this is across like, what, 5, 6 strands. Now, to some amount, I'm trying to add these pops of colors where maybe I had them before, but also I'm going on areas where things are a little bit lighter. Oh, Blue Lotus, thank you so much for the super chat. Woo! Thank you. If you feel like giving me a super chat, and having like a fun or sticker or whatever there are these days, you can see down by the chat, there's like a little dollar sign, and then you can leave me basically like a little tip. And if you're watching this after the fact, and that's not an option, there often is like a little heart with a dollar sign on videos, and you can leave what's called a super thanks, which sometimes I can see them show up in my notification if you leave it with a comment. And so then I do try to reply. Well, let's see. The best way you can support things here is just by watching the videos. That is by far the biggest way you can help support the content. But outside of that, as I bring in some of the pecan brown, and I'm not doing as much. Maybe I'm doing a bit. Sorry, I have texts popping up on my screen. Outside of watching, then I have my Etsy shop. But engaging with the videos is the biggest thing you can do to help support the content here. I think YouTube went through a purge, or Google went through a purge of old accounts, which was very scary, watching a bunch of numbers drop in recent months, or like last month. And so, yeah, I was like, my subscriber number didn't go down, but the rate that I was getting new subscribers did. And I was like, what is happening? So my YouTube channel is super, super old. Super, super old. Okay. And I want to do the moths.
this is our main color. Doing a little bit of this all over. I am attempting to not do too much of it on like the pink or the blue, but some of it may layer. I'm very curious how this will feel in the end, but I have a feeling, even though it's looking dark right now, it'll be fairly medium toned. And so just throwing that out there. But what I'm going to do now, okay. I think I'm happy with our color coverage now. And the big thing that I'm going to do at this stage, besides just wiping this edge, is I am going to let this sit for 15 minutes before I move it over to the stove to heat things up. There will still be a lot of pigments that move once we apply heat, but this is going to allow some of these colors to kind of stay put a little bit. I'll see you in 15. Okay.
Woo-wee. So my day is not done, but I think this might be, as I set my timer. Oh, and I'm going to turn on the steamer basket. Actually, I'll show this off in the video. I will film this clip. This is so pretty. And in the meantime, I'm going to go start steaming this beautiful yarn mop, which, did I ever say that this is Swish DK 100% superwash merino wool? Because that's what it was, and I pre-soaked it in a little bit of water with vinegar. But I'm going to go steam set this for 30 minutes. We'll wash it off camera. I'll show it to you at the very end. But otherwise, I'll see you in 15. Poor yarn mops. Sometimes they just get so left out and forgotten. Okay. I still haven't edited my videos for next week. That is what I have to do. But I think that here is where I will be leaving the stream today. I think that I love where we are and where we're headed. And we created, I've worked on 2 different videos. I had 3 prepped, 2 different videos plus a short that isn't related to a video with the yarn that's outside. I thought that maybe I would do more tonals and stuff, but sometimes, like, you know, it's like the colors and ideas take you where you want to go. And yeah, this was a lot of fun, and I'm glad you could tune in. Now, this video and then the other, like, warm toned color video, those will both eventually be episodes of Dyepot Weekly. Maybe not for a while. I will say there is going to be a roving video that'll come out. Well, it'll come out for patrons sometime next week. And then in August, it'll be public for everybody. I'm working on another roving video, but that one won't come out till the end of December because it's being scheduled for a specific lab partner. But yeah, I don't know. I'm all excited, and I thank you guys all so much for tuning in and hanging out with me today. I have to remember, and if someone, like, when the video is no longer live, if someone can remind me to say, Rebecca, fix the ads. So one thing that happens, and it usually happens like 18 hours, sometimes 24 hours after a live stream, YouTube will go through and they'll add ads like every 5 minutes, which I think is absurd. So I go through and I delete 75% of them because it's just completely absurd to have that many ad breaks. in a like 2-hour, 2.5 hour long video. So that's something I try to do. If someone wants to remind me, awesome. If not, then I'll try to do it on Monday, hopefully. But yeah, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and do all the YouTubey things. Thank you so much. And this was a lot of fun. I do miss not having the face camera though. I think that I regret not having that set up. Also because that means I did not sit down. So, but anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Oh, did I even ever add the link to my shop? I did not. ChemKnits Creations. I'll add that in now. That's my shop. It's probably in the description. Oh, nope, I tried to search emotes. That's my shop. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll chat with you all soon. Bye, everyone.